Philadelphia, late afternoon. The TV glow spills across a linoleum floor, and somewhere a screen door clicks shut as a nation hurries home. At 4 o'clock, the world narrows to Studio B. A red tally light flares, the band counts 8, and boys in narrow ties slide into frame like they've rehearsed it all their lives. There's the shuffle of polished shoes, the quick breath before the downbeat, the feeling, impossible to name, that you're watching America learn its own heartbeat. Out of that moving picture steps Kenny Rossi, the smile that once turned mailrooms into mountains. On March 8, 2024, the applause around his name went quiet, and for a moment an entire era exhaled. Turn the dial, and Bob Clayton appears, steady hands and easy timing. The partner who made a slow turn looked like gravity had decided to be kind. He took his final bow in 2016, but the line of his frame still hangs in the light. Some of the boys stayed with the music. Some walked into ordinary mornings and never told the cameras where they went. Some carried that bandstand confidence into work, into family, into other stages. This is their afterstory. The boys who made America dance. Where did time take them, and what rhythm remains when the song is over? The camera's imaginary tilt finds him at the edge of the floor. Dark hair brushed just so, tie neat, the half smile that always arrived a beat before the music. Kenny Rossi didn't have to announce himself. The studio did it for him. When the band hit the first 8, girls in living rooms from South Philly to Sioux City leaned forward because they knew what was coming. That easy glide, the light spring in his shoes, the sense that the room brightened when he stepped into frame. He was the boy next door with timing, the face clipped from teen magazines and taped to bedroom mirrors, the name written into 1,000 notebook margins. Fans remember the mail first, sacks of it, names and kisses in blue ink. But what made Kenny last in the mind wasn't only a smile, it was the warmth that seemed to steady a partner's hand. On Bandstand, you could fake a pose, but not a hold, and Kenny's was sure without ever looking showy. He had the kind of presence that made the wide studio feel intimate, a place where a shy kid could learn how to cross a floor. There was the puppy love, too, the crush you could feel through the screen, sweet, earnest, never scandalous, folded into the great scrapbook of after-school America. The country was learning how to be young together, and Kenny became one of the pages everyone turned to. He stood for a particular promise of the era, that good manners and a good beat might be enough to carry you through. Time moved. It always does. The camera panned to new faces, styles changed, and the regulars scattered into jobs, families, and ordinary Tuesdays. Kenny stepped away from the spotlight in the way most people do, quietly. He didn't chase a headline. He let the music fade into the background of a private life. And yet the letters kept their color. People saved ticket stubs and TV listings with his name circled. They remembered the way he counted off under his breath, the little nod he gave before a turn, the way he made the floor feel safe. On March 8, 2024, word came that Kenny was gone. The news moved through the community like the last chord of a favorite song, soft but total. Obituaries carry dates, memories carry texture. What friends and fans wrote about him felt like the show itself, gracious, hopeful, just a bit formal, as if a host might step in at any moment and ask how everyone was doing tonight. They wrote about how a television program could make a nation feel smaller and kinder for an hour, and how Kenny, without knowing, helped teach them how to enter a room, how to offer a hand, how to keep a rhythm when the floor is crowded. There's a temptation to look for an ending neat enough to match the way he moved. But the older truth is gentler. Some lives aren't punctuated by finales. They taper into the quiet lives they always deserved. For Kenny, the applause did not so much stop as step back, letting the man have the privacy the boy never could. And yet, if you listen, you can still hear the count, 1, 2, and see the light catch his shoes. From there, another boy glides into view, the partner every camera trusted. He never rushed a beat. That was the first thing you learned watching Bob Clayton, the grace of not hurrying. In a show built on new singles and teenage quickness, he carried himself like a steady drum, the kind that lets a melody take risks. The cameras loved him for it. They could push in close and find calm, shoulders set, eyes alert, a partner's hand received with quiet confidence. When the band counted 8, Bob didn't pounce. He breathed, let the floor open, and then he drew a clean line through the frame. America remembers him most beside a girl with a movie star smile. The two of them, Bob and Justine, were a kind of covenant on Friday afternoons, proof that you could be composed without being cold, that you could be elegant without being older than your years. He didn't dominate the picture, he completed it. Watch the film and you'll see the small things, the way his left hand guided a turn without pulling, the way his right foot set a rhythm that made the room feel safe. In a culture that was learning cool, Bob taught poise. He was also the boy you could imagine passing in the hallway after homeroom. That was part of his magnetism, the balance between the polish of television and the gentleness of a familiar face. He stood straight, he looked ready, and yet there was that trace of modesty, the unspoken awareness that the dance belonged to both people on the floor. It was partnership as an ethic, not a trick. Time, of course, keeps its own set list. The show rolled on, fashions sharpened and then swung loose. New faces took their places on the tape-marked rectangles. Off camera, life pressed forward in ordinary shapes, work, family, addresses that didn't need studio maps. Bob stepped into that stream with the same economy he showed on air. He traded a broadcast schedule for the reliable calendar of weekdays. And in doing so, he became something that felt as rare as any trophy. A man who could carry the dignity of youth into the privacy of adulthood. When news came years later that he had taken his final bow, the memory didn't clamor. It settled. People spoke about timing and kindness, about how he steadied a partner and, by some trick of television, steadied them too. Watchers at kitchen tables, teenagers with homework half finished, parents pausing at the doorway to see which dance it would be this time. They recalled the line of his frame, the relaxed precision, the way a slow spin felt inevitable in his hands. In the reel of American after-school hours, Bob Clayton is the underscore. Not the loudest instrument, but the one that keeps a nation together long enough to hear itself. He modeled a truth that still holds. Style is a matter of care, and care is the first step of any dance. The floor doesn't empty. The record doesn't stop. From that steadying presence, the picture widens to a boy who refused to leave the music at all, who carried it from one stage to the next and then into classrooms of new dancers. The camera finds him mid-step, smiling like the tempo belongs to him. Kelly, in the past, starts talking in the present tense. He arrives the way certain songs do, cool at first, then everywhere. Eddie Kelly came through the bandstand frame with a kind of unbothered precision. Tall line, relaxed jaw, eyes that scanned the room as if measuring where the rhythm would settle. The floor liked him immediately. Producers did too. There was nothing fussy in the way he moved. He trimmed the extra gesture, kept the turn honest, let the beat do most of the talking. If Bobby Burgess taught poise, Eddie taught ease. You notice it in the hold. Some boys gripped the moment like a prize. Eddie treated it like a conversation. His left hand asked, his right hand answered, and the pair of them rode the phrase together as if the music had been written for a circle just that size. When the camera pushed in, the shape stayed true. Shoulders quiet, feet intelligent, timing that could float for 8 counts and still land on the 9 like a promise kept. He was, in the simplest praise anyone can give a dancer, dependable. Not predictable, dependable. The country didn't have language for reality television yet, but Eddie moved through those rectangles of tape like a person aware of being watched without ever becoming a person performing the fact of being watched. He smiled, yes, but he didn't sell the smile. He sold the step beneath it. Somewhere in that distinction lived his particular magnetism. In living rooms where dinner waited and homework sulked, you could point at Eddie and think, that's how you stand next to someone without crowding them. That's how you turn without turning it into a scene. Years later, when he tells the stories, the details have the clarity of a studio floor after the last couple has gone home. The 5-day rhythms, the moments when Dick Clark's questions turned into their own kind of choreography. The surprise of mail. The first time the band hit a break and he could feel the room tilt toward him, not in panic, but in a shared awareness. We're about to make this look easy. And then they did. What lingers is the temperature of his presence. Not hot, not cold, temperate. He steadied the frame. In the footage, shy partners square their shoulders by degrees. Crowds at the edge of the shot soften their faces. Even the camera breathes a little more slowly. Eddie's cool wasn't performance armor, it was space-making. He could carry his own weather into a room and leave everyone else better for having stood in it. Time, obligingly, gives even the smoothest lines an angle. The show moved on. Eddie stepped out and then, graciously, stepped back to tell it. Interviews, panels, small stages where a microphone is enough. He became the voice that helps a memory keep its footing. Not every regular is also a reliable witness. Eddie is. He gives the era back without sanding off the human edges, and he does it in a key that still sounds like Friday at 4. Look closely as the picture widens. The lighting changes, less studio gloss, more courthouse fluorescence, and office daylight. The music quiets, but the ethics of timing remain. The next boy on our list won a big contest and then did something many never think to do with fame. He converted it into service. The camera drifts toward a trophy photo, a Ford convertible, and a man who traded applause for accountability. Mike Balara steps into view. The photograph looks like a promise. Two teenagers in their best clothes, grins a little too wide for the frame, the hood of a brand new Ford Sunliner convertible catching the studio light like a wave. The caption, handwritten at the bottom edge, says what the crowd was already shouting: Pony Contest, 1961. Mike Balara and Franny Giordano, winners. You can almost hear the band hit the brake in the floor part as the last counts land. You can feel the room decide together that this is the pair you remember. Mike never danced as if he were borrowing the song. He moved like he had paid for it in advance. There's a spring in his ankles and a hush in his shoulders that shouldn't make sense together. Yet it does. A teenage paradox turned into muscle memory. Where some boys chased speed, Mike chased clarity. The footfalls are clean, the brakes arrive on time, the ride between them is smooth enough to make the turn look inevitable. On Pony Night, that smoothness turns into story. Franny's skirt snaps with the beat, Mike's lead clicks into place, and the studio, so often a hive of Friday nerves, relaxes into the sight of two kids doing exactly what they came for. Awards are loud. Life after them is not. The car drove off to applause. The photographs found envelopes, and the show kept rolling through new dances with names that sounded like summer. Mike did what very few people think to do with early fame. He put it down gently, then walked forward with his hands free. The boy who could control a floor learned how to steady a room of another kind. Harder, quieter, less forgiving when timing slips. Burlington County didn't hand him a follow spot. It handed him responsibility. Director of the Intoxicated Driver Resource Center is a title without music, all syllables and statute. But it's built on the same ethic he'd practiced in plain sight. Timing matters, and other people's balance is your business when they share a floor with you. In classrooms and intake offices, under fluorescent lights that make everyone look a little tired, Mike taught a different choreography. How to stop in time, how to recognize the edge before you cross it, how to re-enter a life at a safer tempo. There are no trophies for that, only fewer phone calls at 2 a.m. and families who never know the name of the man who kept them from a night they would not forget. He didn't ask to be heroic about it. The accounts that survive, colleagues, friends, the dry language of municipal commendations, draw the outline of a man who carried his teenage steadiness into a useful adulthood. He knew the feeling of a room watching him. He preferred the rooms where nobody was. And yet, when you set the two lives side by side, you can see the through line, a commitment to shared safety, to rhythm as a public good. A dance floor is a kind of temporary society. So is a county program with a waiting list and a budget and 1,000 small mercies. On November 11, 2001, at 57, Mike Balara's own music finally dimmed. The notice said what such notices always say: dates, survivors, a title in capital letters, but the people who had stood under his instruction read between the lines. They knew what it meant to be redirected without being shamed, to be led without being dragged. They knew the difference a steady hand can make when the beat is getting away from you. Hold that image of the steady hand as the camera tilts back to the studio years. Shined shoes, a shy grin, a boy whose timing made the room kinder for a minute at a time. Some smiles you remember because they arrived right on the downbeat and somehow softened the whole scene. The next name belongs to one of those faces, Joe Fusco. The memory of his steps still has the clean edge of a well-kept floor. Some faces live in the bright center of a frame. Joe Fusco lived in the edge where the light softens and the rhythm gathers itself. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't have to be. The camera would wander across Studio B, jackets, ponytails, a dozen stories in motion, and then settle as if it had found the place the music meant to go. That place was often Joe. He stood ready the way a good chorus stands ready, shoulders quiet, feet set to translate sound into courtesy. Watch the old footage and you'll see his trademark economy. No wasted steps, no bargaining with the beat, just the clean agreement of a dancer who trusts the phrase. The hold is gentle, the lead is readable, and the smile, small, neat, almost private, arrives right when the band's top line asks for an answer. It's a miniature lesson in partnership. He never crowds the picture, never advertises anxiety. He lets the dance explain itself, and in doing so, becomes the kind of boy parents pointed to when they said, "That's how you do it." For a lot of teenagers who grew up with Bandstand as the after-school bell, Joe represented something steadier than cool. He was civility set to 4/4 time. In living rooms where the TV sat next to a stack of phone books and a ceramic lamp, you could watch him and feel the room behave. The nervous girl at the edge of the frame took a breath and squared her shoulders. The boy who didn't know where to put his hands learned by watching Joe put his exactly where they belonged. In a show famous for spark, he supplied the ground. The years after the cameras turned away have the soft focus that ordinary life deserves. Jobs that don't need a host to introduce them, addresses written in blue ink, friends who remember the way laughter sounded around a kitchen table. When the obituary came in 2009, it carried the sober weight of dates and places, but the people who shared it added the details that never make print. How Joe would cross a room to say hello, how he kept his shoes clean even on bad weather days, how his timing, even when he wasn't dancing, made conversations easier. Grief for a figure like Joe doesn't arrive as a headline, it arrives as a tug. You see an old clip where a couple lands a break perfectly, where the turn resolves like a question answered, and you feel your chin lift the way it used to. The show did that to a country. Joe did that inside the show. He reminded us that the point of rhythm is not display, it's agreement. Two people deciding for 3 minutes to move in the same direction. There's a final kindness in the way we remember him, not as a myth, not as a scandal, but as a standard. Clean shoes, clear lead, small smile. The kind of presence that makes a crowded floor feel navigable. In the archive of American afternoons, he's a quiet page that never wrinkles. Hold that thought as the picture flashes backward, before rate cards and fashion segments, when contests could rewrite a teenager's month and sometimes their life. The band is tighter, the crowd louder, and you can feel a craze being born between two borrowed steps. Calypso, 1957. The next boy on our roll call didn't just keep time with that moment, he helped define it. Frank Spagnuola is waiting at the edge of the platform, a partner's hand in his and a jukebox glowing like a second moon. Before a nation learned the twist by instinct, it learned to watch the floor for new weather. In 1957, the air inside Studio B carried that thread of change, the fizz you feel before a storm breaks, and Frank Spagnuola walked straight into it. He wasn't loud about it. He didn't need to be. The camera found him the way a needle finds a groove, a boy with a sure hold and a partner who trusted the next 8 counts as if they'd rehearsed them in their sleep. They called it Calypso, a teenage splice of cha-cha and calypso that shouldn't have fit but did, stitched together by kids who spent enough afternoons on taped rectangles to know where a beat can bend without breaking. When the band kicked Little Darlin', Frank and Dottie Horner didn't just dance, they set a room on its axis. The hips marked time, the feet wrote a steady line, and the hands, those careful, watchful hands, kept the partnership honest. By the final hit, the studio had already decided. The contest wasn't a coin toss, it was an echo. Winners. Watch the old clip and you can read the floor like a newspaper. The jukebox glows like a second moon. Dick Clark's smile has the relief of a host who knows the cameras caught the thing they came for. Around the edges, the regulars hold their own excitement in a kind of respectful perimeter, the way a neighborhood crowds the curb for a parade but leaves a channel for the band. Somewhere off to the side, you can see the future trying to elbow in. The twist will come and wipe the slate, as crazes do. But for a season, Calypso belongs to Frank and Dottie, and the nation takes a few steps it didn't know it knew. There's an older backstory threaded through that triumph, the politics of a show changing hands. Frank came up under Bob Horn's tenure, part of the committee when the program was still mostly a Philadelphia rumor with big city manners. When Horn fell and Dick Clark rose, A lot of kids had to decide what loyalty meant at 16. Frank did the grown-up thing teenagers rarely get credit for. He walked back in and kept dancing. The ethic was simple and hard. Show up, keep time, let the floor stay bigger than the argument. After the lights, he did what the best contestants sometimes do. He carried the taste for proportion into a life that didn't need a warm-up band. Interior design sounds like a quiet pivot until you think about what contests train into your bones: balance, scale, the truth that a room works best when the eye knows where to land. Cape May becomes a new address, not a retreat so much as a reframe. You can picture him in the light of a South Jersey afternoon, measuring more than drapes, how a doorway changes when you widen it, how two colors decide to share a wall, how a home earns its calm. The nostalgia industry would prefer a cleaner arc: triumph, tour, legend, but Frank's page turns with the gravity of lived time. He didn't chase the next craze, he let it pass, a gentleman on a crowded sidewalk. And yet, the body remembers. Watch him guide a partner through a slow break, and you'll see the same arithmetic he would later do with lines and furniture: subtract the noise, keep the structure, leave room for people to breathe. Put him back beside the others and a pattern resolves. Rossi's warmth, Clayton's poise, Burgess's stamina, Kelly's ease, Balara's public duty, Fusco's civility. Frank ties the knot that holds the era together, the sense that style is simply care moving at the speed of a song. The camera pulls wide now. The record's last chorus blooms and then fades. We've named 7 boys and followed 7 paths. What's left is the echo in the room after the needle lifts. In that hush, another question rises, the one we've been circling since 4 o'clock. What exactly did they leave us to keep? The record lifts, the room remembers. In the wake of the last chord, 7 names keep time with each other: Rossi's warmth, Clayton's poise, Burgess's stamina, Kelly's ease, Balara's quiet duty, Fusco's civility, Spagnola's balance. They were boys when America first practiced being young in public, when a red tally light could gather a country after school and teach it how to enter a room, offer a hand, and share a beat without saying much at all. Time did what time does. Some found steady work in ordinary kitchens. Some kept the music close and passed it forward. Some stepped into service that never asked for applause. But look at the film again, and you can see the same instruction written across the years. Style is care. Rhythm is agreement. Grace is something you give to the person beside you. That's what remains when the song is over. The small, repeatable kindness of moving together. If you have a photograph in a drawer, a clipped TV listing, a ticket stub softened at the corners, show us. If you danced when they danced, tell us which song, which partner, which Friday. The boys who made America dance are still teaching the step. We finish the lesson together, one memory at a time.